Disney and Sony can't agree on shared custody for Spider-Man, so Mommy and Daddy are splitting up. Spidey is no longer in the MCU.
It's over.
No.
But look on the bright side. Here's the 5 best-case scenarios for the split, and also 5 doomsday scenarios. This is Screen Crush. What's up, everyone? I'm Ryan Airy. For those of you who don't follow movie studio politics, Marvel Studios doesn't actually own the rights to make Spider-Man movies. They sold those rights to Sony back in the 1990s. Spider-Man only appeared in the MCU because the two studios worked out a deal on sharing the character. Now that agreement has faded away like so much Mysterio illusion. But there's 5 reasons why maybe it's for the best. For instance, number 1, this forces Marvel to be more creative with their movie choices. If the studio would have had the rights to Spider-Man in the 2000s, then maybe they never would have made Iron Man. Maybe the idea of an interconnected movie universe would have seemed too risky when they had a surefire superhero hit on their hands. I mean, think about it. We never would have gotten a Guardians of the Galaxy movie to introduce us to the Marvel Cosmic Universe if Marvel Studios had the rights to the Fantastic Four. Limitations spur creativity, so maybe without Spider-Man, new characters like Nova will get more attention. Number 2, so far every Spider-Man movie has been about the MCU and Tony Stark. For instance, in Spider-Man Homecoming, Peter dreams of joining the Avengers. This was a meta-commentary on Sony wanting to hitch their ailing Spider franchise to the MCU's wagon. Most of Far From Home deals with Peter grappling with Iron Man's legacy, another meta-commentary about Marvel Studios moving on without Robert Downey Jr. And both Spider-Man villains have kind of just been Iron Man villains, but by proxy fighting Spider-Man.
How do you think your buddy Stark paid for that tower? Or any of his little toys?
In the comics, Spidey's solo adventures are never this bogged down with world building. Far From Home went out of its way to literally say that Peter is the next Tony Stark, which he shouldn't be. Spider-Man should be on the fringes and burdened by his own problems. His friendship with Tony Stark gave him an instant get-out-of-jail-free card. Peter Parker losing his Stark Industries safety net and struggling to get by will be good for this character. Which brings me to number 3, no more super suits. Peter having a super suit was fun in Homecoming. It was something new for the character.
Activating instant kill.
No, I don't want to kill anybody.
And we got those great emotive eyes, but I was hoping it was a one-off gimmick. Nope. Far From Home doubled down on the super suits.
I need a suit.
Suit?
When I saw the movie, I kept wondering, why doesn't Peter just use an Iron Man suit? Why do we need a Spider-Man at all if he's just going to be wearing nanotech armor the whole time? Number 4, Sony can use their villain-verse to finally set up the Sinister Six. So a little bit of background. Originally, Sony wanted The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to set up a spin-off movie about the Sinister Six. That's a group from the comics made up of Spider-Man's greatest villains. Now they're planning on making a villain-verse composed of Spidey bad guys like Venom and the upcoming Morbius the Living Vampire played by Jared Leto. There's even rumors of a solo movie about Kraven the Hunter. So maybe Sony will set up all of these villains in solo movies and then bring them into a Spider-Man sequel. I mean, that might be okay, right? Just as good as seeing Spider-Man go to Wakanda, maybe. And number 5, leaving the Disney umbrella means that Sony can go darker. They can adapt the classic story, Kraven's Last Hunt, where the villain buries Spider-Man alive and takes his place. Now they can be edgy, they can say they can kill Aunt May. So now let's talk about the 5 doomsday scenarios. Number 1, leaving the Disney umbrella means that Sony can go darker. They can adapt the classic story Kraven's Last Hunt where the villain buries Spider-Man alive and takes his place. They can be edgy, say kill Aunt May. Superhero comics went dark in the 90s. Spider-Man went crazy, found out he was a clone, Superman died, Batman was replaced by a sociopath, and it caused the industry to boom and bust. We got enough of the angsty, sobbing Spider-Man in the Raimi and Webb films. Peter Parker suffers tragedy, yeah, but what makes him Spider-Man is how he rises above that tragedy. You know, he's your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Please, Sony, don't let Zack Snyder direct a Spider-Man movie. Number 2, without Marvel's involvement, Sony goes back to making horrible Spider-Man movies.
Peter.
After Sony's emails were leaked by North Korean hackers, it became pretty clear the studio had no idea who Spider-Man was. They suggested things like Peter should listen to EDM because, you know, the kids like EDM. Marvel Studios and super producer Kevin Feige helped to correct the course and return Spidey to his roots in Homecoming.
Finally.
Sony executives like Avi Arad will start making decisions to prove they never needed Marvel's help. Avi Arad, by the way, is responsible for shoehorning Venom into Spider-Man 3 just so they could sell toys. Number 3, the MCU's plan is ruined. Kevin Feige said that Marvel plans their movies 10 years in advance. That plan was already disrupted by the firing and belated rehiring of James Gunn, pushing Guardians 3 back several years. And Far From Home made it seem like Peter was going to be a huge part of this next arc. He was positioned as the next Iron Man after all. But now,
I don't feel so good.
Number 4, what if Marvel stops hitting home runs with new characters and they actually need Spider-Man? Half of Phase 4 is TV shows, so what if that experiment crashes and burns? What if the new characters like Shang-Chi don't catch on? Would people still go see an Avengers film without Captain America and Iron Man? Probably. But after a while, the Marvel formula of joke CGI fight might start to seem stale. The X-Men are several years away from being introduced, so Marvel might need a marquee star to carry the load. Or even worse, what if there are a couple of Marvel bombs and the studio starts to interfere? Instead of trusting auteur filmmakers like Taika Waititi, the studio would revert to making films by committee like they did in Thor: The Dark World. And finally, the absolute worst case, the Doctor Strangelove Doomsday Device scenario. This is the end of Tom Holland and John Watts making Spider-Man movies. I love Holland's take on this character, and Watts gives these films a plucky, colorful charm.
Hey, is this anybody's bike?
This creative team is telling a great Spider-Man story across several movies, and I really hope they get to see it through. Hopefully, this is all a negotiating tactic, and Spider-Man will be kicking it with Johnny Storm at the top of the Statue of Liberty in 2025. But, more likely, Sony thinks they don't need Marvel anymore, and they took their ball and they went home. Worst part is, there are going to be a lot of little kids at the movies who don't understand why Spider-Man isn't in the Avengers. And that sucks. So what do you think? Will you go see a Spider-Man movie that isn't part of the MCU, or will you hashtag boycott Sony? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're new here, please subscribe. For Screen Crush, I'm Ryan Airy.